Today we're going to talk about how we use the land other than just living on it, but how we can also use land for the resources that it takes to keep us a sustainable population. So we're going to first talk about farmland just a little bit. We're going to go deeper into farmland and agriculture and how we grow food in our next unit, but just to kind of touch on it, some of our land is used as farm to grow crops. Some is in danger of being developed into other purposes, houses and roads, things that people use in urban areas. So in 1996, the federal government decided to protect farmland that was in danger of being developed and set it aside and help keep it as food production or even fiber like cotton and not developed. So there are programs in place to help farmers out. We're going to talk a little bit more about farming later and a little bit about rangelands, but rangelands are areas that are used for grazing animals. A lot of times they're not really great for any other purpose. Maybe they're too dry or they're too wet, but they're really great for raising things like cattle or sheep or goats because they just need places to walk around and get the food that they need to eat. The thing that we have to remember about rangelands is our cattle and sheep and goats aren't the only things that graze these lands. There's also native wildlife, buffalo and antelope and native goats that graze the lands too. There are some problems on the range, mostly due to overusing this resource, what process we call overgrazing. If there's too many animals in one area using that resource, then the land could be degraded. You could change the plant communities, getting rid of the native vegetation and allowing invasive species to come in, and of course not having vegetation to hold the soil in leads to erosion. So what can we do? Well, we've got a couple of things that protect the range. We've got an Improvement Act that gave us some general guidelines about how to treat our rangeland, things like limiting the number of animals that you have in a herd, allowing land to rest for a while, what we call going fallow and not being used so that the vegetation can recover, and replanting native vegetation and getting rid of the invasives. We're going to talk more about forest lands today since those don't really concern as much with the food that we eat. So forest lands do provide us a resource, a lot of resources, ecosystem resources like removing carbon dioxide and actual physical resources like paper, furniture, lumber, maple syrup. So forests are very important to us because they provide a lot to us. There's 3 ways that we can categorize forests depending on how they've been managed in the past. So what we call virgin forests has never had human influence, never been cut before. There's not much of that left. Most of it has been cut at least once before in the past, especially here in Texas. So what we have here is where it looks wild to you, that's what we call native forest. It's been replanted after the harvesters have come through, but then it's been managed after that to be a lot more native in the way that it grows. And then you've got your tree farms. Tree farms are planted in rows. They're just like a crop, just like corn or cotton. They come through every so often and harvest that crop. They'll take down the trees. And there's a couple of ways that they do that. Clear cutting removes all the trees at the same time. So if you have timberland where they're all, say, loblolly pine that are 10 years old, you might come in and just clear cut that and start over planting new loblolly pine for the next 10 years. Other ways of doing that, especially if you've got more of a native forest, is to come in and selectively cut. Look just for the oaks or just for the mature pine trees and only remove those, leaving the rest of them behind. It is more expensive to do that because you're having to work in between the other trees. You can't just go in with a bulldozer and clear it, but it's less destructive and you do have some forest left over when you're done. The problem with forests comes when you have deforestation. That's cutting it all down. Without replacing it. Areas where we are building farms and roads and houses, you tend to have deforestation, taking it all down and then covering it up with something else. The problems with that are, of course, wildlife habitat is reduced. You don't have any place for those animals to live that used to live in the forest. And then in the picture here, you can see the soil is just exposed. So any wind and rain that come along will erode it and degrade the soil. That very top layer, of course, is your O horizon, your organics, and that's the first to go. So even if you let it stay like that and let trees and plants come back, they're not going to have as much good soil to grow in as previously existed there. So what can we do? The good things that we can do for forest is buying and using wood that's been harvested or been produced under sustainable techniques. You can see a little diagram down here about how we replant trees after we harvest them, how we cultivate, how we recycle resources, reuse wood. You'll notice the two pictures here. We have furniture and flooring that have come from other projects, other homes that may have been torn down, and instead of those going into a landfill and having to cut down more trees, they just took the lumber and used it. So there are things that we can do to reduce the number of trees that we have to cut down in the first place. Reducing the amount of paper that we use is another way that we can help that. And of course, reforesting, planting trees back. There's a lot of companies now that are advertising this. If you buy our product, we'll plant 2 trees, or whatever the case may be. Replanting could happen by humans, or you could let natural succession happen, but that's where we reestablish that forest. We bring it back. One great way of managing a forest, especially our native forest, is a process called prescribed burning, and I'm going to link this video down here underneath this video so you can watch a quick film about prescribed burning and how that works. But in this case, people intentionally set fires and monitor the fires. They do it under prescribed conditions when the weather's good, you don't have too much wind, you don't have too much humidity, and they monitor the entire event. The reason that they do this, you would think, oh my goodness, they're setting the forest on fire, because we've seen the fires in California and the fires in Australia and how bad those can be. But they are so bad because those forests are used to a certain rotation of fire coming through every so often, every so many years. And that removes a lot of the underbrush that you see in this picture here, a lot of the little shrubs that have grown and the limbs that have fallen down. Without removing those, they're fuel. So the next time a lightning strike happens, if it's not under good conditions, that can become very bad very quickly. So burning a forest actually helps keep it healthy. In addition to removing that extra fuel that could turn a fire very bad very quickly, you're also returning those nutrients back into the soil. Okay, another use of our land is basically leaving it alone, managing it, but preserving it for the natural habitat that it is. Our very first national park was Yellowstone in 1870s. Today there's over 50 national parks and way more than I can count state parks, about 70-something I think in Texas, and then of course every state has their own set of state parks. But these public lands have several purposes. Some are just for parks and recreation, and that's all they do. Some of our nationally owned lands can be leased out. So south of us in the Angelina National Forest or Davy Crockett National Forest, you can actually lease land from the government and use it for logging, mining, ranching, oil and gas production. They do have the final say of what you do on the land because it is their land and you're just leasing it, but you can use the land from the national government. Some are just maintained for fishing or hunting, for wildlife refuges, or for protecting a particular endangered species. They've set aside that habitat and preserved it. Next to us, the closest biggest preserve is the Big Thicket. In the 1900s, the Big Thicket was very heavily logged. They have a stand of longleaf pine trees that were very large pine trees, not like the pines you see around here today. And then in the 1930s, the logging industries were struggling during the Great Depression. So the national government bought out this land from the logging companies and helped those timber companies to stay in business while also establishing some public lands to preserve habitat. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. Created the National Preserve in 1974 officially, and it's hard to see. Let me move myself here. It's hard to see on this map, but you have a corridor of preserved land going through. All this green area is Big Thicket National Preserve. You would think of a park as being like a square, but it's not. It's a long string of corridor that runs on either side of either the Neches River, Village Creek, Sabine River, and that preserves that bottomland hardwood forest that, one, your timber companies didn't want anyway because it's very hard to log those areas, it's so wet, and two, it made great wildlife habitat. So Big Thicket right south of us is a great example of companies and government coming together to preserve our habitat. All right, Wilderness areas were established by the U.S. Wilderness Act, and that protects them from exploitation. A lot of them are open to non-invasive, I guess I'd say, activities like fishing, hunting, things that won't exploit the land, but things like motorized equipment that would tear up trails are not allowed. So those are wilderness areas. You can see in the map down here, most of our wilderness areas, not all, there's definitely some in the east, but a lot of them are out in the western United States. If you think about your U.S. history, we settled over here in the east and then marched our way across the west, so this was where we had the most open space, at least people living in that area, so we could grab that land and preserve it. Wilderness areas are great for preserving species and their habitats, for recreation, for research, but they are vulnerable to too much love. Traffic jams, people coming through and littering and eroding the trails. Logging might not happen on the wilderness area, but a logging operation next door to the wilderness area may still affect it. Water pollution, air pollution. All these things can affect our wilderness areas and make them vulnerable, but where we need to protect them. The goal of all of this, all of our resource usage, is a concept called sustainability. Sustainability is our ability to use resources without abusing the resources, without depleting them for the future. So resources like the land that we use and the pollution, the air that we're breathing, we need to be able to use that, of course, but not abuse it and make it so that future generations can't use it. So we have to really consider what our sustainable yield is. Sustainable yield is the amount of a renewable resource, so like trees, for instance, we were talking about forestry, that can be taken and used without reducing the available supply. So if you think back to that tragedy of the commons where I came around and gave you more fish every year, you do have a renewable resource, whether it's fish or trees, but how much can you use without making your entire population go down? Y'all had to do some math there on the fly last Friday, trying to figure out how many fish you could catch without, and have some left for the next year without completely depleting that resource. So that's our goal, is sustainability. In the next couple of sections, we're going to talk about food, and then we'll talk about mining and taking some more of those resources out and how much can we take without going over our sustainable yield. So look for the additional videos posted underneath that I wanted you to see on prescribed burning and a couple of other things. See you tomorrow.